Hey everyone, I'm Ben Avery, and this is Strangers and Aliens. Strangers and Aliens is a podcast over at strangersandaliens.com, but it's also this YouTube channel right here that you're watching right now. And we talk about the intersection of faith and Christianity and science fiction and fantasy. And basically, how does all that faith stuff, the spiritual side of things, mix up with the imaginative side of things? And that's what I'm doing here with this series called Is It Worth Reading? I'm taking a look at Christian science fiction books and just asking, is it worth spending your time, your valuable time, and maybe even a little bit of your valuable money on reading this book? And the reason I'm doing that is because there is, yes, a lot of Christian science fiction that is out there, a lot of Christian fiction, a lot of Christian art that's out there that's not great. There's a lot that is, don't get me wrong, but that's what this is about. It's trying to find the stuff that is worth reading and worth spending your time with. And so what I'm talking about today is, it's a book, but it's actually two books. And the book that I read for today is called Hornet's Nest, written by Aaron and Alan Rainey, father-son writing duo. But, you know, when I read this and thought about my review for it for this video, it got me thinking about another book that I've read before called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. And the answer to the question, you know, is you're talking about if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for some milk, and then he's going to need this, and he's going to need that. And it didn't make me think of if you give a mouse a cookie because of the long rabbit trail that children's book takes. That's really fun and funny, especially if you have children that like fun and funny things. But if you give a mouse this book, they're going to want the other one, okay? And so this book that I'm talking about today, Hornet's Nest, is actually the sequel to Flight of the Angels. So I really need to talk about them both together. And if you read Flight of the Angels, you're going to want Hornet's Nest. And, you know, it took a few years to get there, but I actually read Flight of the Angels a long time ago. And when I was thinking about this series, I was like, wait a minute. I know that there's a second one in that series. I should read that second one in the series for this series that I'm doing here. Because Flight of the Angels was a Christian science fiction book that, is it worth reading? The answer is yes. I really enjoyed it. And so I thought I'm going to give Hornet's Nest a try and find out if that is worth reading. And I'm doing this video, so you probably have figured out the answer. Is it worth reading? Yes. Yes, it is. And it's not as homework, okay? Now, I probably wouldn't call anything written in the 2000s science fiction homework because, well, there's just so much of it. And a lot of the groundbreaking things have been done. There are a couple things that I could probably think of. The Martian might be one. But this is not homework. I'm not saying that Flight of the Angels and Hornet's Nest is worth reading if you like Christian science fiction and it's homework. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's actually a really good book. It's actually a really good series of two books they're currently working on the third one. Now, like I said, Aaron and Alan Rainey are the father-son duo behind the book. They write the books together. And I actually interviewed them on my podcast, Strangers and Aliens, the audio podcast. It's in episode number 58. If you go to strangersandaliens.com, just search for Angels. There'll be a link in the description below for this video as well. But I talked with them just about the book, the writing process, and everything that they were doing. And full disclosure, I forgot that they said that they were going to do this, but they did tell me when Hornet's Nest first came out that they mentioned me in the afterword, and they do. And that's not why I'm saying that this is worth reading. Okay, it's a nice bonus, but I got to the end and I'm reading through, I'm like, oh, I'm looking at my iPad because I read it digitally. But as I was reading through it, I was like, oh, I forgot they said they're going to do that. That's cool. You know, and they were just thanking me for the podcast interview. I guess I was their first podcast interview, which is kind of fun. But point being, even though I'm connected to them in some small way, that's not why I'm saying that Hornet's Nest and Flight of the Angels is worth reading. It's worth reading because as I look at like I do a quadrant of things that I use to judge art. All right. So my quadrant actually has 5 parts. So the 5th part is something I added later on as just a fun part. And it's literally actually just, did I have fun? And that's what I kind of look at when I'm trying to figure out maybe a 5-star rating and look at these different four things plus, did I have fun with it? You know, because something could be awful, but it's still fun, right? Well, My quadrant is, I take a look at style, I take a look at plot, I take a look at characters, I take a look at themes. And if I have good things to say about those four things, if those four things resound with me, if the style really engages me, or if the story is really exciting, or if the characters are interesting, or if the themes, if the themes engage with me, those are all things I'm going to use when I do a review to decide how I'm going to talk about this and what are some of the things I'm going to talk about. And sometimes in my podcast, when I'm talking about something, I'll just say, hey, as we're talking about this, you want to just talk about the quadrants? And yeah, because it makes it easy categories to talk about. And then there's the fun part. So yeah, is Flight of the Angels, is Hornet's Nest, are these two books worth reading? Based on style, I would say yes. It's a readable style. It's an exciting and engaging style, and it kept me wanting to read more. I didn't find myself reading slowly because I had to mull over things, but I also didn't find myself just breezing through because it was just really simple. It's not simplistic writing, but it is readable, and it was something that I found myself enjoying the read. The plot itself also for both of these books, but specifically for Hornet's Nest, because that's, I guess, technically what's going to be up on the thumbnail, but the plot was also engaging and interesting, and there's some fun things going on. The basic idea of the plot is that someone is sending out robots to destroy Christians who have gone to other planets and gone to different colonies, and it's a persecution of Christians by this government that has some shady people who are doing some shady things with some powerful, I'm calling it robots, so that's kind of simplifying things, but anyway. And you've got the good guys who are trying to help people and save themselves as well in the process. So the storyline, though, it got me in, it pulled me in, and I'm talking about Hornet's Nest specifically with that plot. The Flight of the Angels was also enjoyable. It pulled me in. The characters are also engaging and fun. I actually like spending time with some of the characters, some more than others, but that's actually meant to be. The one character that I found myself not really liking that much, you're not supposed to like him that much because he's not making great decisions. And so that's a part of his character arc. So it's a good thing. So the characters, I like the characters. And then you have the themes. And the themes, there's a lot of stuff about faith in there. There's stuff about trusting God. There's stuff about like being drawn to God and being, kind of being in a pre-Christian state. And then there's also some what ifs there. And one of the things, when we talked about Moonfall, that's what it was. Moonfall, not the greatest movie in the world, but it did have some interesting science fiction ideas. And one of the things that it did do with its, I almost will call it the B plot, but I think the intention of it was that was the idea. The moon is falling and what's going to happen with the people on Earth. But that kind of became the B plot because more interesting stuff was happening with the team that was trying to stop the moon. But you're asking yourself the question, what if I was there? And what if this was happening? And what if, as this stuff was happening around, would I help people? Would I trust people? You had people who were helping each other get to safety, but you had other people who were like, I need to get to safety, so I'm going to take your gas, and things like that. And it's the same kind of thing when you're watching a kind of zombie apocalypse, when you're watching Walking Dead or something like that, and you're asking yourself, what would I do if I was put in that situation where it is life and death? And that's what happens here is you've got these questions of what if, what would you do if, and what would you do if you're faced with this kind of persecution where they are, literally basing these life or death decisions about you, depending on what you believe and what you're willing to say that you believe, or if you're willing to say you don't anymore. And then there's also the idea of resistance and resisting against persecution and helping people who are being persecuted. And so then there's also that idea of rebelling against a corrupt government. And when is that okay? And how far are you supposed to go? And so that's what I found myself engaging with as I was reading this story. And I found it to be just a fun read. Now, one of the things I'll say is, I was on their website. I think they put a brief little thing from me from Strangers and Aliens where I said something about how it was like part Star Wars, part Blade Runner. And that's because there was some corporate espionage things going on. Actually, that's in the first book, Flight of the Angels, that was going on. There's some of that still in Hornet's Nest. But when I was reading Hornet's Nest, the stuff that I started thinking about more for Hornet's Nest were Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, and Star Wars. Now, the idea of Star Wars is because of a lot of the action that was going on, and it just felt like a Star Wars kind of action. The Battlestar Galactica thing that kind of stuck with me was kind of new Battlestar Galactica with the military adventure, the military sci-fi stuff that was going on. And then for Babylon 5, just finished Babylon 5 again, and I do want to ask Season 5's forgiveness for just not thinking well of it and not treating it well, not speaking well of it. Babylon 5, Season 5, you are better than I remembered, and while you're not as great as Season 3 and Season 4, you are a very good season of science fiction, and I'm willing to declare now Babylon 5 as the greatest science fiction TV series ever. But that's probably another topic for another time. These two books reminded me of Babylon 5 because of the politics stuff that was going on, and because of just it's galactic politics that you have regular people who are involved in, and you have regular people who are affected by it. And you also have that military side of things where they are this group of angels. They are not angels, but they call themselves angels. That's their flight group and they fly around in fighter ships. And so there's your Star Wars kind of action. But then you also have them, like I said, dealing with the political stuff that's going on that is very bad for them. So, and then you also, in the midst of all this, have a conspiracy of someone, they don't know who, but someone has betrayed them. And they need to figure out what's going on with that, because they are hiding and they're in hiding. And if they are discovered, it will be very, very bad news for them. And so you have that thread running through it as well. So Flight of the Angels and the second book, Hornet's Nest, are they worth reading? Yes, they are worth reading. They're worth your time. I really enjoyed them. And you can find their website, flightoftheangels.com, but you can also find these books on Amazon where you can get a Kindle copy or a paper copy. And I say run, don't walk. Go get these books. I think you'll enjoy them. If you like military sci-fi, if you like Star Wars, if you like a dose of spirituality in there, then you're going to like these books. But back to my earlier comparison to If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. Alan, Aaron, I'm looking at you guys. If you give a Ben a Flight of the Angels, he's going to want a hornet's nest because he's going to want to know what's happening next. And if you give a Ben a hornet's nest, he's going to want whatever's next. So come on, guys. I really want to see what you have next in store for your angels, all right? And I would say to you readers, that's probably the one drawback, is when you get to the end of Hornet's Nest, you're going to want to know what comes next. So a good problem to have. So until next time, I want to say thank you so much for spending time with me here. Again, you can find the podcast over at strangersandaliens.com, or just look up Strangers and Aliens wherever you get your podcasts. Episode 58 is when I interviewed the authors of this book, and you can also find many, many more topics. I do want to ask you to, what is it that they say, smash the like button. I wouldn't literally smash the like button because that would harm your device or your computer. But that is what they say, and so that is what I'm going to say. Smash that like button and smash that subscribe button. And I want to thank you again for spending time with me and just talking about books. If you have any other recommendations for me, some people have left some comments with a couple recommendations. And if you have any recommendations for me of any Christian sci-fi, leave it in the comments below. I love to hear, because I am actively seeking out more science fiction books to read. And I still have my question out to you about Charles Williams. If anyone is familiar with Charles Williams and his 5 urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy books that he wrote, I wanted some help looking for which one of those 5 books should I read. And if no one answers the question, I'm just going to have to just choose one randomly, I guess, and go from there. But again, until next time, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for spending time with me. And as you go on your journeys, Godspeed.